No exaggeration, Iron Rebellion might have very well set a new standard for VR gaming when it comes to immersion.
Yo, I cannot explain how awesome this actually feels.
This game doesn't just let you pilot mechs in VR, it makes you feel like you're piloting mechs. Underdogs is also a great mech fighting game, but this is an entirely different kind of mechanized combat experience. This is, in a nutshell, switches, toggles, and a highly customized approach to immersive gameplay. But let's touch more on the theme so we're all on the same page about what kind of game this actually is. When it comes to Iron Rebellion, the gameplay is straightforward futuristic mechanized combat. This isn't a story-driven dystopian mech brawler like Underdogs is.
Secure and hold the boss territory and drain the enemy reinforcements. So kinda like Battlefield, alright.
It focuses on making you feel like an actual pilot before throwing you into medium-paced multiplayer matches. If you can picture yourself sitting in a mech suit and moving it with controls, this game captures that vision perfectly. You're playing familiar game modes like Team Deathmatch and Capture the Flag while piloting a customized machine armed to the teeth. Sometimes you'll face off against bots if a lobby isn't full, but the primary experience is all about multiplayer carnage. And to my surprise, the player base seemed pretty mature compared to other multiplayer VR titles. But what separates this game from literally most games is how grounded the experience is. Everything about piloting these machines is brought to life in the cockpit. With the way switches and screens are used here, it feels like you're really in control.
But it's cool that you could take your hands off the control at any moment and do things.
This level of immersion is something only VR can deliver, and that really comes to life with the mechanics. The way controls work in this game blow most VR games out of the water. You load into a quick tutorial that teaches you the basic about controls and movement, but once you breeze through it, you're presented with 3 classes of mechs: light, medium, and heavy. And as you guessed, each has its own strengths, weaknesses, and playstyles, but as you level up, you unlock a second variant of each, complete with unique abilities. The variety here means every match feels like an opportunity to experiment and find your preferred playstyle. Customization is a highlight because it doubles down on the feeling of piloting your own exclusive mech. You can even mix and match weapons on your mech's arms and equip augments that have noticeable impacts on how your mech operates. These augments can boost things like aim stability, magazine size, and even mobility. It adds just the right amount of personalization, but the real magic, the reason this game is as fun as it is, happens in the pilot seat. There are a lot of controls in here, and almost every button you see does something important. You operate these controls to do a variety of things, from starting your mech to adjusting your communications. It flat out feels like you're an actual pilot. Even the basic controls like firing weapons and moving are done incredibly well. Rotation is smooth and done with your right arm as opposed to your body, so you always feel like you're seated just like your character is in the mech. Now, seeing everything move without moving your actual body will take some getting used to, but just like driving a car, you can adjust quickly. You're sitting both in-game and in reality, so your brain will rationalize that pretty quick. You'll control your mech entirely with your hands and arms, which somehow results in one of the most immersive VR experiences I've ever had. This game isn't perfect though, as there are a few minor hiccups you'll bump into. The quick match button can be finicky with the way the controls work,
Okay, that button does have its own problems.
and bumping into things while hovering can create some head-scratching moments. But the gameplay itself is relatively simple and definitely fun. Matches are typically well-paced, as long as you aren't stuck in a lobby with nothing but dumb bots.
Is he stupid? Why is he just letting you shoot him?
As you level, you unlock more advanced mechs and new weapon systems, keeping the progression feeling satisfying while increasing your ability to customize. It's worth noting that, again, the controls might feel a bit awkward at first, especially if you're new to VR. I even experienced a touch of motion sickness in the first minute, but it passed quickly, and once I got the hang of it, operating the mech felt almost second nature. Now, as far as the graphics go, for all intents and purposes, this game looks pretty rough. Inside the cockpit, at least for the most part, looks pretty nice and feels great, but you'll see plenty of rough looking textures even on the inside. As for the outside, the environments you'll be fighting in aren't visually appealing at all, if I'm being honest. Granted, this had no negative impact on my experience given how fun the mechs are. The fact that my main focus was on other mechs meant I never found myself intentionally staring at the environment. If anything, it's a testament to just how amazing this game is that these battlefields look so terrible, but the game still feels so immersive. When it comes to audio, on the other hand, you won't hear much talking outside of the tutorial.
To start, please locate and power up all 4 primary systems.
Which is perfectly fine because this isn't the kind of game that needs that, especially since the game doesn't necessarily have a forward-facing story. You'll hear a good amount of talk coming from your teammates if you're in a full lobby though. Just a heads up, when you load into a match, by default your voice chat is set to everyone and your mic is set to off. It's pretty nice actually how even the way you turn on your comms and manage your chat is done immersively through the cockpit. Just make sure you set your communications up so you don't end up telling everyone on the map what your plans are. As far as the mech sounds themselves, you'll basically get explosions, footsteps, and thrusters, but for reasons, the sounds feel a bit off to me. The big one being soft-sounding explosions. The explosions and impacts lack an expected bass to them that often softens those oh crap moments, but you'll definitely still get them, especially when you get ambushed in a 1v1 scenario. And speaking of 1v1 scenarios, most VR games would be embarrassed to compare their options controls to this game. Almost all of the options, menus, and interactables are touch sensitive here. It should not have taken this long to find a combat-focused VR game that completely eliminates flat screen menu navigation styles. Sure, there are things you'll simply use controller buttons for, like recalibrating yourself or pinging things, but 99% of the controls in this game are all touch sensitive. And they feel intuitive, which is and always will be big in VR. The options menu even has an FPS counter. Now, while I would have preferred something more subtle than large numbers appearing in my face, it's awesome that this game has this, because personally I think more games should. Just a heads up, there's no vignette or teleport available, but neither of those would be a good idea in a game like this anyway. Visibility is too important in this game for vignettes that blur the edges of your vision to be viable here. And both snap turning and teleport just don't feel practical in multiplayer games. Also, I'm not exactly a fan of the positioning of the menu itself on the wrist. I wish this were adjustable or resizable, but it works and it's all touch controls, so I'll gladly take it. But this brings us to the grand conclusion, the answer to the question, how does Iron Rebellion stack up overall from an immersion standpoint? As of December, this game is no longer early access, so it gets the same treatment as all other fully released VR games. That said, Theme gets a 5 out of 6. There may not be a forward-facing story, but the gameplay is incredibly well executed here. Mechanics also gets a 5 out of 6. From the cockpit controls to the combat itself, this is high-level VR immersion. Graphics gets a 2 out of 6. The cockpit looks great for the most part, but the environment and textures leave a lot to be desired. Audio gets a 3 out of 6. Sounds may lack the punch you'd expect from explosions and impacts and feel off at times, but the sounds themselves don't really pull you out of the experience. Options gets a 5 out of 6. Touchscreen menus, especially in a game like this, are the way to go. The limited comfort options and awkward menu placement are a bit of a pain, but it's nothing immersion breaking. For these reasons, Iron Rebellion walks away with an immersion score of 4.5 out of 6. If you've ever dreamed of piloting a real mech, Iron Rebellion is an absolute must-play. In fact, it's one of the most immersive games VR has to offer, and it's worth every second in the cockpit. I want to hear your thoughts on this game though, so as we rein in the new year, drop a comment below before you check out more VR content. But until next time...
Oh, it is the moon.